I never believed in ghosts until I bought this box. I was a skeptic. Ghosts, curses, superstition, all nonsense. I'd roll my eyes so hard during horror movies, I thought they'd get stuck. Haunted objects? Laughable. That was me, last spring. Then came summer, my cross-country road trip. What started as freedom turned into a descent into something else. This is the story of the antique I regret ever laying eyes on. Late July. The sun beat down on the asphalt, shimmering the road ahead. Hours blurred. My mind started playing tricks, conjuring phantom billboards and whispering mirages. Colorado was the goal, a friend waiting, but the journey was the point. The scenic route through the desolate heart of the Midwest. Daytime drives, quirky stops to break the monotony, nights under a sky choked with stars. My Jeep, a battered but loyal beast, was crammed with gear. Headphones blasted my escape playlist. Solo road trip, the ultimate taste of freedom, or so I thought. The first few days were normal. Kansas, the giant ball of twine, a monument to human absurdity. Diner pie in some forgotten town claiming best in the state, tasted like lies and desperation. Roswell, New Mexico, UFO museum, a monument to human hope and delusion. I was collecting Americana like cheap souvenirs, each stop a fleeting distraction. Then I drove into that town. Can't even dredge the name from the sludge in my memory now, but the feeling, the dread, that's branded in. It was the kind of place time forgot. Bleached by the sun and choked by dust. Buildings sagged, paint peeled like sunburnt skin, relics of a bygone era. A 50s postcard come to life, faded and decaying. Silence hung heavy, broken only by the whine of cicadas and the whisper of wind through cracked pavement. Pulled over to stretch, grab a lukewarm soda from my cooler. That's when I saw it, wedged between a boarded-up gas station, windows like vacant eyes, and a motel that looked ready to crumble into dust. Was an antique shop. Martha's Curiosities, the sign declared in letters so faded they were almost ghosts themselves. Not my usual haunt, antique shops, but something. A pull. The way the afternoon sun caught the dusty window panes, throwing fractured rainbows onto the sidewalk. A faint, brittle tinkling. A bell above the door announcing my arrival to an empty store. I pushed the door. It groaned open, releasing a gust of air thick with the scent of mothballs and decay. Inside, chaos reigned. Clocks frozen at dead hours, mismatched china gathering dust, clothes smelling of forgotten lives, mountains of knickknacks, each one whispering stories I didn't want to hear. Floorboards screamed under my boots, each step echoing in the oppressive silence. An old woman sat hunched behind the counter, needles clicking like insect legs. Knitting something gray and shapeless, oblivious to the summer heat. Didn't even glance up. "Welcome, dear," she rasped, voice like dry leaves skittering across asphalt. "Need anything, just holler." Her gaze stayed fixed on the needles, but I felt her eyes on me, assessing, measuring. I drifted through the cluttered aisles, fingers trailing over cold, lifeless objects. The air grew heavy, pressing down on my chest. Shadows clung to the corners, deeper and darker than they should have been in the afternoon sun. An unsettling stillness, like the world outside had ceased to exist. I was about to turn back, escape the suffocating atmosphere, when I saw it. Back of the shop, on a high shelf, almost hidden in shadow, a box. Not just any box. This one, it pulsed with a wrongness. Shoebox-sized, dark, polished wood that seemed to drink the light. Carvings covered every surface, intricate, unsettling. They writhed and shifted in my vision, patterns resolving and dissolving as I stared. Symbols etched into the lid, alien swirling like a language dreamt in madness. Beautiful, yes, but wrong. Unnatural. Like it had clawed its way out of a nightmare. I reached for it. A jolt like static electricity shot up my arm. Cold. Ice cold, despite the humid air. A shiver crawled down my spine, settling in the pit of my stomach. "How much for this one?" I asked, voice sounding hollow in the silence. Held it up, trying to ignore the prickling unease crawling under my skin. The old woman finally lifted her head. Eyes. Pale, milky, cataract clouded. They fixed on me, not at me, but through me, like I was a pane of glass and she was seeing something awful on the other side. "That one's special," she croaked, voice a dry rattle. "You sure you want it, dear?" A nervous laugh escaped me, brittle and thin. Why wouldn't I? Just a box, right? A weird old box. She didn't answer, just stared. Long, silent seconds stretched into an eternity. Then, $20. The price felt insignificant. Too low for something that felt so potent. I fumbled for my wallet, handed her a crumpled 20. Her fingers, gnarled and cold, brushed mine as she took the bill. Wrapped the box in rough brown paper, movements stiff and mechanical, like a puppet on fraying strings. Not another word. As I walked out, bell tinkling weakly behind me, I felt her gaze boring into my back. Heavy, possessive. Like she hadn't sold me the box at all, but something else had been transferred. A cold dread settled in my gut. Mistake. I'd made a mistake. That night, I found a secluded clearing, miles from that town, miles from anything. Pines clawed at the bruised twilight sky. Stars blazed, indifferent and cold. Tried to lose myself in the vastness, the silence. Set up camp, fire crackling a fragile defiance against the encroaching darkness. Sat cross-legged, unwrapped the box. Closer, it was mesmerizing, horrifyingly beautiful. Carvings deeper, more disturbing than I'd first thought. Twisted faces seemed to emerge from the wood grain, mouths open in silent screams. Hours vanished as I traced the alien symbols, fingers numb despite the fire's heat. Tried to open it, lid fused to the base, seamless, impenetrable. No hinges, no latch, no keyhole, just wood. Shook it, silent, empty? No. Heavy. Weighted with something unseen, something expectant. Set it aside, tried to distract myself with the fire, the stars, the vast emptiness around me. But the feeling, watched. I was being watched. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of pine needles sent jolts of ice through my veins. Rationality screamed. Imagination fatigued, the isolation. But my gut was a screaming animal, clawing for escape. Sleep was a battlefield I lost quickly. Tossed, turned, eyes snapping open at every imagined sound. Morning crawled in, gray and reluctant. Unease clung to me like morning mist. The box sat on the damp earth beside my tent, exactly where I'd left it. But wrong. Definitely wrong. Carvings seemed deeper, etched with shadow. Darker. The air around it colder. Not morning chill. A bone-deep cold that seeped into my skin, into my soul. Morning chill, I told myself. Liar! A cold dread coiled in my stomach, tightening with each breath. Packed up camp, movements jerky, desperate to escape the oppressive stillness of the clearing. Jeep swallowed the miles, but the weirdness, it clung. Box sat on the passenger seat, brown paper crinkling like whispers. I could feel it. Presence, alive, watching, waiting. Ignored it, focused on the endless ribbon of road, the hypnotic white lines. Glimpse in the periphery, box. Stomach lurched, turned up the music, volume deafening, trying to drown out the silence, the feeling. Campground in the mountains that night. Small, almost deserted. Trees pressed in, shadows thick even before sunset. Fire, dinner, rituals of normalcy in a world tilting sideways. Tried to relax. Impossible. Sun sank, shadows stretched, twisted into monstrous shapes. Watched. The feeling intensified. Eyes, burning into me, alone, utterly, terrifyingly alone. Early night, tent zipped tight, flimsy nylon, a pathetic barrier against darkness, silence. Then a sound, faint, rhythmic, tap, 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 knocking, on the box. Blood turned to ice, heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the suffocating silence. Froze, breath hitched in my throat. Tap, 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 stopped, abruptly. Wind, branch, animal, logic clawed for purchase. Lies. It was the box. The box was knocking. Days bled together, a smear of fear and exhaustion. Tap, tap, tap. Constant, subtle, always just beyond conscious hearing, a subliminal pulse of dread. Shadows danced at the edge of vision. Flickering movements in the rearview mirror, figures in the trees, gone when I turned my head. Fatigue, hallucination, the box, a relentless, silent accusation. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. One night, fire. Desperate act. Grabbed the box, adrenaline a thin shield against the rising panic. Threw it into the flames, roar. Flames leaped, greedy, consuming. Relief, sharp and fleeting. Watched the inferno, heart-hammering hope against reason. Fire died. Embers glowed, spitting defiance. Box, untouched, sitting in the ashes, pristine, mocking. Not a scorch mark, not a trace of heat. Panic, cold and suffocating, washed over me. Get rid of it. Had to get rid of it. Last night, remote highway, blacktop ribbon, unspooling into nothingness. No other cars for miles. Wrapped the box in a blanket, shoved it in the back seat, like that would contain it. Fool. Presence, stronger now, suffocating. Tap, tap, tap. Louder, insistent. Whispers, faint, indistinct voices murmuring from everywhere. Nowhere, just beyond hearing, just beyond understanding. Driving me insane. Pulled over, hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the wheel. Couldn't breathe, couldn't breathe. Couldn't think? Grabbed the box, stumbled out of the Jeep. Heaved it, threw it with all my strength into the black maw of the roadside ditch. Watched it tumble, disappear into the darkness. Silence, blissful, terrifying silence. Then, Crack, echoing, like the box had landed on concrete. Solid, impossible. Rearview mirror? There. Middle of the road, sitting upright, perfectly intact, glowing faintly in the darkness. Drove. Slammed the pedal, tires spitting gravel. Didn't stop, didn't look back. Nearest town, a cluster of flickering lights in the vast darkness. Motel. Flinchy, rundown, but walls. Doors. Locked it. Bolted it. Sat on the edge of the bed, back pressed against the headboard, staring at the door. Waiting. For what? Didn't sleep, just waited. Listened to the silence, the motel's thin walls offering no comfort, only amplifying the hollowness inside me. The next morning, I woke to a frantic knocking at my motel door. Heart leaping into my throat, I scrambled back, adrenaline spiking, peered through the peephole. Nothing, just the empty sun-baked walkway. Relief, quickly replaced by a cold dread. Hallucination? Or had it found me already? Opened the door a crack, then wider. Still, nothing. But on the floor right outside my door was the box. Brown paper torn, wood gleaming malevolently in the morning light. It hadn't been there a second ago. I was sure of it. My breath hitched. This wasn't just following me. It was toying with me, morning after. Fled the motel, didn't even shower. Drove straight to Colorado, friend's house, sanctuary. Didn't mention the box. Couldn't. Sounded insane even in my own head. Unpacked the Jeep. There. Back seat. Right where I'd left it. Carvings, glowing. Sunlight seemed to catch and amplify them, throwing dancing shadows across the car interior. Whispers. Louder. More insistent. No longer just at the edge of hearing. Now a constant low murmur, like a crowd gathered just beyond the veil of reality, discussing me. Desk. Box sits there now, as I type, watching, feeling it. Presence. Heavy, malevolent. Tapping started again. Faint, but growing. Whispers. Louder. Don't know what's inside. Don't want to know. Why won't it leave me alone? One thing I know for sure. Wish I'd walked past Martha's Curiosities. Wish I'd never seen it. Wish I'd never bought it. Anyone? Please, experienced anything like this? Losing my mind? Is it alive? Don't know how much longer I can. Any advice? Anything? Please. I'm listening.